Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought it would be fun to do something that I came across called the Seamstress tag, and as far as I know I've never actually been tagged in it, but I thought it would be something fun to do today. It is 12 questions that are to get to know me a little better and get to know more about my sewing style and the projects that I make and that sort of thing. So this tag originally went around the internet 2.5 or 3 years ago. But I just came across it recently, so like I said, I thought it would be fun to do today. So I'm going to go through all 12 questions, and you all can get to know me a little better. And if you want to join in on the tag, definitely feel free to do so either on a with a video, or if you have a blog or something like that, and then make sure to send me the link so that I know that you joined into the tag. So let's get started with the first question, which is, who are you? So I am Whitney. I have been on YouTube for a little over 9 years. I live in Oklahoma with my husband, our 2 daughters, and our 2 dachshunds. And I am just a quote-unquote work-at-home mom. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but my work is YouTube and also sewing memory bears. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. Question 2 is, when and why did you start sewing? So I actually cannot remember exactly when I started sewing. I had a toy sewing machine when I was about 8 years old, and I would sew different scraps of fabric together. I would just like sew them together with a straight line, and then I never actually did anything with them. I never made like a baby quilt, or a baby doll quilt or anything like that. I never like made clothes for my dolls or anything. I would just sew scraps of fabric together. And then when I was probably right before I turned 14, I got a little bitty sewing machine that did not even backstitch, but I did sew together my first quilt top on it. And then when I was about 17 is when I got my first like real deal sewing machine, and that's when I really started sewing. I started doing t-shirt reconstructions and things like that. And as for why I started sewing, I just thought it was really fun. I had watched my mom make a lot of my clothes when I was a kid, and she had gotten into quilting as well when I was in my teens, and I just thought it was fun. I was really close to I still am really close to my mom, and we have a lot in common and things like that, and so I just thought it would be fun to learn to sew because my mom knew how to sew. So I guess that's pretty much the reason why I started sewing. Number 3 is, what is your favorite or proudest make? I am not sure. I have made a lot of things that I'm really happy with, that I'm really proud about. The one that really sticks out to in my mind is my first like big project, and it was a dress that I made using an original is either late 50s or early 60s sewing pattern, and it was for a class project, the only class I ever took that had anything to do with sewing. It was a costuming class, and that was my final. I had to make something using a sewing pattern, but I had to make some alterations to it. So I made a dress, and I was so proud of it. It was like the most challenging thing I had ever even come close to doing at that time. That was a little over 10 years ago. So I'm still very proud of it. Even though I have come a long way since then, that is still just one of my really proud moments. I've made a lot of other things since then that I really am proud of as well, but that one sticks out the most in my mind. Number 4 is, what is my most disastrous make? And I've had a lot of projects that didn't turn out, and you all have never seen them because I just ditched them partway through. They weren't working out, and so I would just get fed up, or just realize that it was not going to happen, and I would get rid of it, or stop working on it, throw it away, whatever. But as for one that was not that great, but I still went ahead and finished it, and I loved it anyway, was a t-shirt reconstruction that I did. I think it was right after my senior year of high school or my first year of college. I can't remember. But it was a t-shirt project that I got out of a book, and you flip the shirt upside down, use the original hemline as your drawstring casing, and then you add these little like, oh, what are they called? These little inserts. I forget what the name of it is, but they're like diamond shaped inserts, and you sew them into slits that you cut into the skirt. And yeah, it's just like a fun t-shirt reconstruction, and I loved that skirt, but it was actually pretty terrible looking. I didn't really understand how to sew something with like a point in it into a slit that I'd cut. So the top edge of each of the little diamond pieces was like horribly sewn in. I was using a machine that liked to eat fabric, and I was sewing with stretchy t-shirts and having to do a zigzag, and it was just like pretty bad. But I for some reason loved that skirt, and I wore it a lot, and like looking back now, I still own it. I'm pretty sure I still own it. I think it's hanging in the back of my closet, and I don't know why I still own it, because I'm never gonna wear it. I'm not even sure if it'd fit anymore, but for some reason I was so proud of that skirt, even though it looked terrible. But I don't know. That's the beauty of making things yourself. Even if it's like is nowhere near perfect, sometimes you just still love it because you work so hard making it. The next one is, where is your favorite place to go fabric shopping? I really don't go fabric shopping just for the sake of it. So I end up getting my fabric at a lot of different places. I found a lot of really good things at the thrift store. I buy fabric at Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Joann's. Like, I am not picky on my fabric. Like, yes, there's a difference in quality in those places, but it depends on the project. Like, sometimes I just want a really cheap fabric to practice a project with, or I just really like the print of or something. So I don't necessarily have a favorite place to fabric shop. Like, I love a lot of the prints that Joann's has, but Joann's is pretty far from my house and more expensive, so I can't just go and buy just loads and loads of fabric just because I want to, you know. So I buy fabrics all over the place. The next one is my most used sewing pattern, and I really don't use and reuse patterns a ton. I tend to use a pattern maybe once, and then I move on to a different pattern and make something else, because I don't really enjoy doing a lot of repetitive things. But there are two different patterns that I have used a few times, and the first one is Simplicity 8447. I made a pair of pants using it, and then I've adapted that pattern to make my jeans. I'm also planning on making the dungarees and the shirt again sometime soon. So this is a pattern that I will be using multiple times. And then the other pattern that I have used a couple of times was the Jedi tunic pattern. I can't think of the number right now, but I did walk Jeremiah through making the Jedi top, and then I made one for myself as well. Next up is my most dreaded sewing task. Probably ironing. I know that ironing is a very necessary step for getting a really nice finished look, but I don't love it. Like, I will not iron clothes, like laundry. And Jeremiah actually irons his own like taekwondo uniforms if they need to be ironed. I do not do it. And we don't have a full-size ironing board, which is probably one reason why I don't like it so much. It's kind of an inconvenience to iron, because I just have a little bitty ironing board set up next to my sewing machine, and then I have another portable one that I can take different places around the house if I'm working in different rooms. But yeah, ironing is probably the thing that I dislike the most. Next is my favorite sewing task. You know, I'm not sure. I didn't like pre-think up answers for these questions, so I'm not sure on that one. There's a lot of things that I really enjoy about sewing. I don't know, it kind of just depends on the project. Sometimes I like just the actual like assembly of a project. Sometimes I love doing like top stitching and detailing and things like that. Like, sometimes I really don't like hand sewing, and sometimes I really like hand sewing. So it really depends on the project on which part is my favorite. Next up is, what is my favorite sewing entertainment? And I think this question means like, what do I listen to or watch while I'm sewing, and that can vary. Sometimes I just go through my watch later playlist on YouTube, because when you're looking at your main page on YouTube, there's three little dots under the video, and you can click that and add it to your watch later playlist. And that's what I do. I scroll down to like the last video that I watched on YouTube, and then I scroll up and add all the videos I'm interested in to my watch later. Then when I have time, like when I'm sewing or something, I just turn on that playlist and listen to a whole bunch of videos in a row. So sometimes that's what I'll do, or I will find a specific channel that I've really been into lately, and I will go through one of their playlists and listen to a whole bunch of their videos. And then other times I will bring my computer in and turn on Netflix, either a show like Gilmore Girls that I've seen a ton of times already, or I will turn on like a cheesy teeny bopper movie, like a Cinderella story or something, and just listen to that. I don't really listen to just like music or podcasts or anything like that. I prefer videos that are either YouTube or shows or movies. The next question is printed or PDF, and definitely printed. I do not have a printer that is hooked up to a computer, or a printer that has ink for that matter, so I cannot print out like my own PDF patterns or anything like that. So I prefer to just go to the stores and buy commercial patterns that I can use and not have to print anything out myself, which is kind of funny because I do offer some PDF patterns, and anytime I create a PDF pattern, I either have to make my husband print it out for me at work, or my mom print it out if I'm going to be going to her house soon, and then I use the versions that they've printed to like make sure everything prints accurately and all of that. So yeah, I'm about as low tech as a YouTuber can be. It's kind of funny. Next up is what sewing machine do I use? And my sewing machine that I prefer is Frankie. That's its nickname. And he is a brown sewing machine from the 60s, made in Japan, and I do not know what company it was branded as, because these machines were intended to be knockoffs of the Singer sewing machine, and tons of them were made in Japan, and they were branded with hundreds of different companies, makes, models, all of that, and resold through various stores all over the world. So I've had tons and tons of people say, oh, I have a machine just like that. It's a, and then they tell me a brand. And then someone else says, oh, I have a machine that looks just like that. And then they tell me a brand, and it's a different one every single time, because these were just made, like loads of them were made and came off the assembly line and then just stuck a different branded label on them. So there is practically no way of knowing what this machine was originally sold under by the store or the branded name. But I do know from the 60s, made in Japan, and I love it. I'm looking at my machine right now. Frankie sews insanely fast, and I'm so happy with that. I love sewing fast. Like, it scares people how fast I sew in real life. Anytime I use any other machine, all I can think is, man, this machine is not very fast. Like, I was using a Singer machine, a Singer Simple, I think, to make my kids' Halloween costumes, and all I could think was, this machine is so slow, because I'm so used to sewing crazy fast on a vintage sewing machine. Another thing worth mentioning is that I do have Frankie in a sewing machine cabinet, but it is not what the machine came in. The machine just came in a regular, like, carrying box, like most vintage machines, and a Brother machine came in the cabinet, but the Brother machine does not sew as fast. So I took that machine out of the cabinet, put Frankie in, and so I had to hook Frankie up to the controls that were built into the cabinet, so it is now a knee pedal machine. And if you aren't familiar with those, some vintage machines have knee pedals, and what you do is there is a pedal that looks like a foot pedal, but it has an extra little bar that comes down from it, and you move your knee to the right to push your knee into that bar that hangs down. And at first I hated that. I thought it was so hard to do, but I finally figured out I have to put a little wooden box under my foot to get my foot up to get my knee up to a height that's really comfortable, and now I prefer sewing with my knee instead of with my foot. So it takes a little bit to get used to, but I actually really like it now. The final question is, do you have any other hobbies? And now I don't really use the word hobby in general. It just seems kind of a, I don't know, it's just an odd word to me. So I don't consider sewing to be a hobby. It's just something that I do. So I mean, I like to cook, but I don't call it a hobby. It's something I do. I feed my family, but I do enjoy it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do a lot of things. I don't call anything a hobby though. So I guess it just depends on your perspective. I sew, I cook, I take photos sometimes. Yeah, that's about it, I guess. So anyway, that was all 12 questions of the Seamstress tag. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoyed getting to know me a little bit more. Yeah, I'm not really going to tag anyone since I wasn't tagged for this. So, like I said earlier, if you're interested in doing this tag, go ahead and do it. And then, yeah, send me a link so I can check it out and get to know more about you. And, yeah. I will have some more videos up next week. And until then, happy sewing.